Differentiation on this gorgeous Friday afternoon. I know it was hard walking past the beach, knowing I have to be inside, but thank you so much for supporting us and being here today. My name is Pearl Grace Pantaloni. I'm the Business Development and Marketing Manager at Cornerstone General Contractors with the Alaska chapter, and I'm also your program's co-chair. And also on Monday, I found out that I passed my CPSM exam. So just a few housekeeping things, of course, silence your cell phones, put it on airplane mode or do not disturb, just be respectful to everybody in the audience. And don't forget to use our hashtag for social media. I had the privilege of introducing David a couple years ago at PRC Alaska, and I have the honor of introducing him today in Hawaii. David Lecours is principal at LecoursDesign, a branding agency serving only AEC firms. David is also co-host of PSN.show podcast. David, a lifelong surfer, will share what we can steal from surf brands to differentiate our firms. Ladies and gentlemen, David Lecours.
The year was 1982, which you probably gathered from the fact that I chose brush script as the font. Are you guys ready to get introduced to the protagonist in this story? This guy, 13-year-old, bowl cut, braces from Rancho Bernardo, California, a suburb of San Diego, and his life was about to change forever. Because at his next birthday, his uncle gave him his very first surfboard. And this started a love affair of surfing that migrated in all different directions, one of which was creating scrapbooks of his surf experiences with his buddies growing up, putting down surf locations and photos of the surfing that was going on. It even convinced him that it was a good idea to have his senior portrait taken with his surfboard. Still 1982, and I didn't know it at the time, but I also started this love affair with branding. And so today, you can see the love affair starting with branding because my junior high school notebook I covered with starting to draw surf brand logos. Now, I had no idea what profession I was going to do, but I just liked to do this for some reason. And I spent a lot of time, probably more time than I was doing my homework, drawing graphics for my next surfboard that I was probably never going to make, but it was sure a lot of fun creating surf graphics. So today is all about this intersection between surfing and branding. And so more specifically, we're going to talk about how we can learn from surf brands to differentiate our firms. And I'm going to make this slide deck available to everybody. I'm also sending capturing some videotape. So if you want to get the slide deck or the videotape or some other goodies that I reference in the film, just put your business card in this pouch that I'm going to pass around, and I'll send that to you when we get back. So why this topic, and specifically why should you care, right? And here's the thing. Even in today, it's 2019, and we have this challenge for our firms that's been the constant challenge forever. And that is that it's very difficult for our clients to differentiate between one firm and your competitor down the street. And I know this for a fact because I've interviewed hundreds of clients on behalf of my clients doing brand discovery work, asking them, how do you perceive this firm versus the other one? And they say, candidly, it's really tough. We struggle with that, and so as a result, what happens? Of course, they line us up in this cattle call of the RFP process, the interview process, and unfortunately, a lot of times it just comes down to price, which is a very quick path to the bottom and a path to differentiate. So you kind of have to empathize with the fact that it's tough for your clients to differentiate between you and your competitors. And I want to do something about that because I want to avoid commoditization. I want to shroud it. I want to shred it. I want to cut it up. I want to hit the lip. I want to smack it. I want to break it down and try to eliminate it from your life. And so what I hope to do is give you some tools that will allow you to do that. And so really my personal mission and the mission of my firm is to help AEC firms be meaningfully different. Now, being different is easy. You know, everybody in your firm could shave their head or do something kind of silly, get a tattoo, but that's not meaningfully different. And so I want to share with you some tools and techniques that will help you to be meaningfully different. And why? Because you need to be able to attract great talent in terms of recruiting, and you need to be able to attract great clients. So everything I'm going to share with you today is helpful across that entire spectrum of recruiting clients and recruiting talent. The thing is that surf brands struggle with the same problem, and so it's difficult to differentiate between a lot of the surf brands. Let me give you some examples. Let's say it's 1779. You decide to surf right here at Kaiser's. You grab your 150-pound solid redwood board and you take it out, and you're ripped, right? Because it takes a lot of muscle to be able to just carry that thing from the beach to the water. And you go out and you have a great session, and you come back in and you decide to take off your loincloth, dry it out, put your board up. But all your buddies have put their boards up and their loincloths as well. Now, it's problematic when you go back to retrieve your loincloth and your board because you want to go back out and you don't know which one is which. They're all the same. Or let's say you're the board shaper, the guy that makes those boards, and you come up with this innovation. You add a little swallowtail, a little cut into the end of the board that allows you to turn and make the board a little bit looser. You want to mark your trade or a trademark. And so how do you do that? How do you differentiate one board from the next? And nothing's changed ever since 1779. If you think about it, a pair of board shorts is essentially nylon with a drawstring, right? How do you differentiate and make that other than a commodity that just competes on price? Or how about what boards? Polyurethane, polystyrene, wrapped in fiberglass, dipped in resin. They're pretty kind of very similar. Or wetsuits made of neoprene. So these surf brands have a problem similar to what we face in terms of trying to avoid commoditization. So it's a super crowded landscape in the surf industry, and they've got to cut through this clutter in order to get noticed. Now, to show you an example of how busy it is and how undifferentiated a lot of our firms are, I'm going to pick on one little segment of AEC right now, and that is the geotechnical engineering industry. Anybody out there? All right, so bear with me. Hopefully I won't make any enemies here. I'm going to show you some names of geotechnical firms, and I think it makes my point really clearly. So when I put this name up, I want you all to yell it out, okay? Ready? Here we go.
Geonon, Geotech, Geotech, Geotechnics, GeoWest, GeoCore, GeoCore, GeoGround, G-Tech, G-Shock, G-Money.
Just seeing if you're paying attention. So I think you can just see with one little sliver of our industry, it's pretty, just in the brand name, and I'm not talking about the fact that we all use maybe the color red if you're an architecture firm, if you love the same sans serif typeface on all your proposals, right? So it unfortunately just gets worse from here, but there's a solution, because I'm all about solutions, and that's where we're going to go next. And so, said every principal above the age of 60 everywhere, can't we just do great work? Why do we need to market? Why do we need to brand? Why do we do all this stuff? No, great work is just table stakes. It's the minimum barrier of entry in order to even be considered at the table to win a particular project. So here's super specific, the tools that I'm going to share with you today that I think can help your firm stand out. One is to have iconic people, projects, and teams. Second, we're going to talk about brand ambassadors. Third, brand archetypes, messaging, and then finally, experience design. So that's where we're headed, and let's jump right in. Oh, let me clarify where we're going to apply these tools, and that is SOQs, proposals, digital marketing, both email, social media, all those forms, advertising, websites, presentation interviews, and video. So let's start with icons. And when I'm talking about icons, what I'm talking about is either founders or projects or founding stories that are bigger than just that person. They have iconic resonance with your particular audience. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. In the surf industry, Jack O'Neill is an icon. He helped found a lot of things, one of which is the O'Neill surf brand, and they utilized him as this icon for the firm. He passed away a couple years ago, made it to 95, and was this real innovator, real pioneer, absolute rebel within the industry, was an avid sailor, surfer. That company, he was, interestingly, out, and somebody had just invented a surf leash, which was a new thing that allowed you to avoid having to swim all the way back to shore if you lost your board in a big set. Now, these initial prototypes were very crude, and this particular one was made of surgical tubing. So he somehow wrapped it around his ankle, tied to the end of the board. He lost his board in a big wave, a lot of chaos, sort of went through the washing machine, as we like to say. That surgical tubing stretched out, and as you can probably imagine what happened next, bam! Yeah, into his eye, so he lost his eye, which only added to his mystique as this almost pirate-like character who then, went on to, and I'll just sort of show you, this is their homepage, and now you see his likeness on all these shirts, and he's become this icon. So if you go through, you kind of get to learn about O'Neill, the brand, as this pioneer. So contrast that with Obiara, who's the founder of the global engineering firm Ara, and they're utilizing him as this global icon. He's no longer with the firm, but the cool thing is that you don't even have to read this whole thing, just focus on this part, which is that he's created this culture underpinned by his aims and values. So the things that he brought to the equation back in the day when he founded the firm are still relevant today. And I highly recommend going on their website and reading this key speech. So back in 1970, he wrote this sort of rabble-rousing speech for his entire firm about the vision of the firm and how marketing played an integral role. And so it's really kind of reassuring as marketers that there were pioneers out there, even back in 1970, who were advocating for what we do. So throughout today's talk, I'm going to give you some homework. This is one of the things I think you should add to your homework list, is go read this speech, because I bet you'll find a nugget in there that you can use today. Art Gensler, another icon that has really paved the way, wrote a fantastic book called Art's Principles, where he talks about sort of advice about how to excel in business. So Art Gensler is the icon of that firm. Now, icons don't have to be the founder of your firm. They could be the story of how your firm was founded. It could be a project that is so iconic that it represents how great your firm is as this little microcosm of your entire firm. It could be a team that maybe overcame great adversity in a project, and they can be leveraged or elevated to a higher level. So a perfect example on the Town & Country website, they've got a great story about how this sort of rags to riches story of the founder starting the whole company in an old barber shop and starting to sell surfboards, and built this into this multinational brand and had great success. So contrast that with an architecture firm who just happened to have designed the world headquarters for Vans, just happened to be a surf brand, so this example worked out really well. But I love how this firm, Rap Studio, highlights this project as sort of iconic for what they can do with workspace. I also love that Vans has taken their workspace and made it an iconic place that shows off the culture. And tell me after you watch this little clip that you wouldn't want to work in this space. Classic checkerboard, iconic pattern. Skateboard to work. But anyway, super cool space that I think the architecture firm benefits from, and also Vans, the surf brand. Now this is an interesting situation. So Bob Berkeville, one of the founders of the B in BNIM, very well-respected architecture firm, was a pioneer in green building and sustainability. In fact, he was one of the very first people that basically created the U.S. Green Building Council. And they tell, I've seen him speak, and he tells a very iconic story that's really kind of unexpected, right? You would think that we would only tell iconic stories that would put ourselves in a really good light, a project that is so outstanding that it casts this favorable glow across the firm. But he tells this super powerful story about how he was involved with designing a hotel in Kansas City. I think it was in the 1970s. And one of the features of this hotel is it had this really amazing bridge within the hotel that offered these really great views of a courtyard down below. And one New Year's Eve, the firm, or not the firm, but the hotel was hosting a New Year's Eve party. And everything was going great, you know, the music was pumping, this bridge was just packed with people, boom, 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 and it crashed. And it crashed several floors down, and a handful of people were killed. And so, you know, Bob at this point is tearing up as he's telling this story because while he isn't legally responsible, it turned out that the hotel did not pay attention to the capacity sign, overloaded this bridge, and it just reached its capacity, which any structural engineer in the room can tell you is a big problem. But what he did from this example is he decided that from there on, his work was going to do no harm, right? So that was going to become his life's mission. And he translated that into sustainability, that buildings shouldn't do harm. They should actually enhance the occupant's experience and sort of life force, and not, you know, put in off-gassing materials and help, you know, destroy the ozone layer. And so that's what kind of inspired him. So they use that story as an iconic story. And I admire it because he really makes himself vulnerable. You typically wouldn't do that, but in hearing his story, you're like, yeah, you know, this guy's human. They learned a lot, and it inspired him to course of action. Now, of course, if you're Foster's and Partners, and you've designed the Apple Visitor Center, and if you've designed the thing that they're calling the spaceship, then you're going to use that as much as you can, right? This is one of the most iconic buildings on the planet right now. And so, of course, it's right front and center, and it becomes this iconic project that they show off and are ridiculously proud of. All right, so let's switch gears and go to brand ambassadors, which are a little bit different than the icons of the firm. So I like to think of, in the surf world, brand ambassadors are sponsored athletes, and in our world, in AEC, they're thought leaders that are out there sharing their thoughts and demonstrating their expertise, typically through writing and through speaking. Let me give you an example. Bethany Hamilton is 13. She's paddling out with Alana Blanchard, another superstar Grom, in a place called Tunnels in Kauai, and it's a great day, it's sunny, she's on her board, she's paddling, and she takes a pass at the water, and unfortunately she meets the mouth of a tiger, 14-foot tiger shark. It rips her arm off. Luckily there were people there that had the foresight to wrap her arm in a leash and create a tourniquet. Meanwhile, she's fighting for her life, has lost nearly 60% of the blood from her body. They take her immediately to the hospital. Ironically, her father is scheduled for a knee surgery that morning at the very same hospital. Like a good dad, he says, no, you go first. And they save her life. A month later, she's back in the water, and 2 months later, she's competing again, and she's still a professional surfer competing. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to surf, but I can tell you with 2 arms, it's a challenging sport. It is amazing what she's able to do using her legs and the single arm to be able to still be a competitive surfer. So as you can imagine, these other brands that she's sponsored by want to have her as a brand ambassador because she upholds these values of this company about sort of perseverance and overcoming obstacles. And so, they pay her good money to display their logos on her board. Town and Country. When I was growing up as a kid, these guys were my heroes. They were like the most badass rebels. You had Dane Kealoha and Marvin Foster and Buttons and Matt Archbold, all these guys that were really kind of rebellious, they were strong, they were like just amazing athletes. And so like through association, I wanted to be like them, and so I wanted a TNC board because I thought it would make me a better surfer. But anyway, that's sort of the power. So Billabong has a page of all their brand ambassadors. Here's Taj Burra, super talented Australian. And this might look familiar to you, right? So we've got an action shot, we've got a headshot, and we've got a bio. And this is a great way to do it. This is what we do in our industry a lot of times on our websites. Renzo Piano, an awesome brand ambassador.